Greetings and welcome to College Planning with the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professionals. I'm Dr. Ketsia Sadler, founder of College Cafe and your moderator for this webinar series. We're happy to see you tonight on this kind of coolish August night. It's been kind of hot, but thankfully we've got a little breeze. Hopefully there's no rain wherever any of you are. And I know our pilots on the program tonight are probably happy that there is no rain because I know that's probably the worst nightmare you can have when you're flying. So tonight we'll be talking about careers in aviation. But before we get started, we like to thank our partners, the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professionals, Parent Matters, Golden V, and of course, College Cafe. So we're really excited this evening that we are talking about something that while careers in aviation don't relate to us as our job, but I'm sure many of us have been on airplanes numerous times. I know myself in the last 3 years, I've been on more airplanes than I probably was in my whole life. So I am grateful to the pilots and the mechanics who are out there. So let me start first by introducing our guests. We first have Mr. Calvin Conyers, who actually is no stranger to the NAAHP family. If you watched us, you've seen him before. And Mr. Conyers is currently the Vice President of Admissions at the National Aviation Academy. He graduated from Mount Ida College with a BS in Business Administration and a certificate in Leadership Studies, as well as an MA in Communications as well. And he discovered his passion for higher education. And so that's what brings him to the admissions sector. Our second guest is Mr. Brian Worthington, who is currently a New York City police officer. Yay, thanks for keeping our New Yorkers safe. He's from Queens, New York, one of my former hometowns as well, raised in Woodside, Queens. And he discovered early his love for flying, but didn't know it was possible to become a pilot due to lack of accessibility and resources. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Mr. Worthington is also a commercial instrument rated airplane pilot. He's an aircraft owner, minority business owner of Flight King New York LLC. And he's also a United States Army veteran, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. And our third guest who will be joining us in a little while is Miss Kimberly Scott Ford, who is a pilot with over 11,000 hours in commercial and military aircraft. She's currently a first officer for Alaska Airlines based in Seattle, Washington. And she served in the United States Air Force after graduating from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1990. So I figured I'd do a little bit of research on airplanes, aircraft, etc. before we started the program. So I found that in April of 2024, it said that there are 691,700 pilots in the United States. The last salary I was able to find was that in May of 2023, airline pilots, other pilots as well were making, flight engineers, were making $219,140, as opposed to a commercial pilot who would make about $113,080. In the United States, they said they're actually running out of pilots and that they need to train 87 pilots per day for the next 20 years in order to get us to the level that we need, which Mr. Worthington and Ms. Ford could probably attest to later on and let us know a little bit more about. That 90% of pilots are white men, aircraft pilots, commercial airline pilots, less than 7% are women, and only about 1% are women of color. And that there are 135 aircraft maintenance schools in the country and about 1,233 flight schools that actually look at fixed wing aircraft training. So new term for me. So that's my little bit of research, so you all can give us a little bit more information. So I want to start with you, Calvin, since, both parts, the pilot is important, the maintenance part, mechanic part is important. So let's start with the mechanics part. Talk to us about how you are now working at a school where you're training the mechanics, and what is it that students would need to know as far as becoming a mechanic in the
aviation industry. Yeah, so when you think about, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a passion for me just speaking to, especially our people, just educating them about opportunities that they may not have access to or may not have heard of or been exposed to. So I'm a big fan of trades and technology. Um, you know, what we do at the National Aviation Academy, we teach and train students to become aircraft mechanics. So these are the people that are fixing the airplanes, they're building them up, maintaining them, and pretty much making sure that they're safe to fly. One of the things I like specifically about the program that we offer is that it doesn't just limit students to fixing airplanes for the rest of their life. They can actually go and fix helicopters, drones, anything that flies or has hydraulics. Even in the military sector, they can go and work, um, you know, um, in those type of arenas as well. But there's a major demand for aircraft mechanics. Boeing made a projection earlier this year that there's going to be a need for over 690,000 technicians over the next um, 18 years. So, we're one of the schools that we're regulated by the FAA. So students are testing to get their FAA license. And once you receive the FAA license, two things I like about that is that it never expires as long as you're working in the industry, and it allows you to work anywhere in the world that service U.S. aircrafts. So we're providing this training. We're doing it in a short 14 months, which is one of the shortest programs in the country, and we've been around since 1932. So we have a great handle on, the industry. Um, when you talk about success rate, we are graduating students at 83%. We're also placing students into the industry at over 80%, and it's been that way since we've been established. Um, we have great partnerships with the industry. So we have 3 career fairs where we have students, companies that are coming to the campus 3 times a year to specifically hire our graduates. So, JetBlue, all the big name commercial airlines. But then we also have, the train system that's up here. Our training provides um, the knowledge you need in order to become a service technician for the MBTA. So that's another arena. Or if students want to go and work on wind turbines, this training is going to provide them the training that they need to go into, the clean energy tech industry if that's something that they want to do. So there's a lot of different avenues students can choose. I like the aviation side of it. Mostly because of the benefits. You're working for a lot of these airlines. One of the things they entice you with is the buddy passes or flight benefits where you can probably fly anywhere domestically for free, but maybe international flights paying for the taxes on those, um, but also the demand. So when we think about the pandemic that we just went through, when 30 million people lost their jobs, um, the aviation industry didn't really take a huge hit. Less people were traveling, but there were still job openings, and people weren't, you know, they weren't as desperate as people that were in just these normal, typical jobs that we push the average student to. So, when I think about the trades and just what we offer, I think that it's really a great opportunity to go into the aviation industry because of the demand that's there. And also the connections.
So how early can students actually start at your school? Can they come out of high school, or do they have to take a few courses at a community college first?
No, we teach from the ground up, so you don't need to come with any type of prior experience. Obviously, if you're a hands-on type person, that definitely helps. Only thing you need is just your high school diploma, GED, or high set, and then we'll provide the training from the ground up to get you prepared for that FAA exam.
Okay. Do you all go to college fairs? Because I want to say I don't feel like I've ever seen any aviation schools at college fairs.
Yeah, so we do attend college fairs mostly in Massachusetts.
Okay.
We don't really travel out. We have a campus in Tampa, Florida as well, but we don't really travel too far outside of outside of our niche market. We do receive students from across the country. because of the length of our program. So people are like, all right, the average program is probably 24 months, 20 to 36 months, and we're offering it in 14 months. So, um, you know, like I said, when you think about the trades, I think that that's just something that's not really talked about. So really just bringing students and just getting them, introducing them to some of some of the job opportunities and just the demand. I think that's something that really excites the students and get people excited about the industry.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So we're going to transition to Mr. Worthington. So tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up as a pilot now with your own flight school. So if you can start way back high school or even younger if you want to.
Okay. So yeah, my journey it was a long one, but I'm here now, so that's good. So yeah, I grew up in the city. Grew up in the housing projects in New York. Had a pretty rough growing up. A rough childhood. But I used to live close to LaGuardia Airport, and I would see the planes take off, and I wonder how is this plane in the sky? Like, what's keeping this big piece of metal in the sky, right? Where is it going, right? And who's flying it? So, back then I always wanted to fly. I always had, that love or passion for aviation. But one of the main problems that I had was not seeing anybody that looked like me in the cockpit of these airplanes, right? I can remember way back when I went to Florida. Me and my dad went to Disney World, and I got on the plane, and I was able to meet the pilot, and he asked me, let me come up to the front of the airplane. Went up there, and I was just in awe by all the controls. But again, growing up in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, if you're not seeing anybody that's doing it, I don't think that is affordable, accessible, or even obtainable. So never really pursued that passion. But I quickly realized in high school my grades were horrible. I'm cutting school, doing all the wrong things, and quickly decided that I'm going to have to do something with my life. So I went to JFK Airport. I applied for a job working on a cargo aircraft, and that wasn't good enough for me. I still wanted to be in the front, flying the thing. So I actually went to Vaughn College of Aeronautics, which back then was called the College of Aeronautics, and I signed up for the pilot program. But my grades were horrible. I couldn't get into the pilot program. So I'm glad we have this gentleman online, because I actually went for the mechanical side. So I went to get my A&P. But my parents, my dad made a decent amount of money. My mom, on the other end, didn't really make much. So that put me in a bind where I couldn't really get the funding to go to school, right? So I opted to go into the military instead. So I went to the military, and when I got there, they was basically saying, we're gonna put you, we're gonna. They gave me many jobs that I can choose from, but I wanted to be around aviation. So I told them, just give me a job that's gonna put me around the airplane, and I'll be good to go. So they actually sent me to an 82nd Airborne Division, which little did I know, I was jumping out of airplanes. I didn't really want to jump out of the planes; I wanted to fly things. So I ended up jumping out of airplanes. It was one of the greatest things I've done in my life. Changed my whole perspective of life around. So in the military now, this is where it got a little tricky. I still wanted to pursue my aviation career in the military, but I was told that I can take the test to become a pilot. If I fail it, I can take it again. But if I fail it again, I can never take it for the rest of my life. And that just completely threw me off because of where I came from. I was just scared and didn't think that I was good enough to do it. And again, still didn't see many people in the military that looked like me doing it. So I decided not to. But just staying, with it and still have aviation in the forefront or in the back of my mind, I decided when I got out of the military that I'm going to pursue my dream. So I got out of the military. I joined the National Guard. I was in the aviation unit in the National Guard. And I started working on Black Hawk helicopters as a mechanic. And from there, I had was introduced to a flight school on a small airport. I went there, signed up, and that's kind of how my aviation career started. From there, this is where it gets tricky again. From there, many people that don't look like me, right, own these schools. They, overcharging. They just everything's about money, trying to get money. So I decided I'm gonna have to do something where I could, produce some kind of flight training academy and give back to the youth, give back to people of color. So I decided to join to start my own business. So I started my own business. It's called Flight King NYC, and it's a flight training academy. I have 2 airplanes there, and looking to buy more in the recent years. Um, and I provide flight training, and it's for everybody. It's not just for people that look like me and you guys, but it's for everybody, right? So I started that school. Um, you know, I provide the same level of training all the other schools provide. Um, and on top of that, I joined the organization called Black Pilots of America, and now I'm the president of the organization, which is a national organization. And our whole purpose of our organization is to advocate for people becoming pilots, or anything aviation. You have air traffic controllers, you have mechanics, you have ramp agents, anything aviation, and for you to actually be able to own your own aircraft as well. So that's my story in a nutshell.
So let me tell you, kind of going backwards, but how hard was it to start your own school? Did you get a lot of support, a lot of resistance?
So definitely got a lot of resistance. I'm actually the only black-owned school at the airport that I'm at, and a lot of resistance. But the resistance is good, right? You keep on pushing forward, you keep on doing what you do, and if you have that high level of expertise, the high level of training, then it doesn't matter how much pushback somebody gives you. I mean, I'm stepping to the table, just as qualified as everybody else. So, in that case, it doesn't really matter what they say or what they do. I'm going to just push through those barriers. So, but yes, definitely got a lot of pushback, but you just got to keep on pushing forward.
So what did you have to do to start a flight school? I'm assuming you would need certain number of flight hours or your own plane. Like, what did you start the school and then buy the planes, or buy like how did that go? If you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so I ended up getting a little lucky. I was renting an airplane from somewhat of a flight school. It was more of a flying club. So I was renting the airplane from a flying club, and the owner of that club was getting a divorce, and he was everything was going downhill for him. So I told him I want to I want to purchase the airplane, I want to purchase the business, and I want to go from there. So it kind of fell in my lap. What I was doing before was I was already doing city tours. So I would take people up and fly them around, New York City. I was doing that, and I was doing ground training. So you have a lot of ground training before you can become a pilot. Before your flight training, there's some ground training you have to do as well. So I was doing a lot of ground training, and taking people up, flying, building up my flight hours doing that. And when that situation kind of fell in my lap, I was there to take it over. So I didn't actually buy the business. I bought the airplanes, and I acquired the location, and then just went from there. So that's kind of how I got it started. You don't need an airplane to start a flight training academy, because there's a lot of ground training that you have to do as well. So you can start a ground training academy, and then later, the airplanes will come. It's just, for me, the airplane was there when I started, so I was able to acquire it.
So can you give a little more detail on the ground training versus the flight part? Like, because again, I don't know any, so we're trying to help entice the people who are listening to figure, okay, what do I want to do and what do I have to do?
Yeah, so in order to become a pilot, you have to take some ground training, and that consists of some hours with a ground instructor or a flight instructor. So basically, you have to take 3 tests before you become a pilot, and that's an oral test, a written test, and also a practical exam. So the ground portion of it, you're going to learn a lot of different concepts. It's a lot of ground based learning that you have to learn. From there, you'll start flying. So you can, and some people do it concurrently. You don't have to do one and then go to the next. You can do it at the same time, but it really depends on how the individual learn, and how they retain information. You have some students that want to go through the ground training. It's about the ground training sessions that we give is 13 weeks. So 13 weeks, you get about 40 hours of ground time. And after that ground time, we go ahead and start your flight lessons, which you need again 40 hours of flight time as well to become a pilot, and that's at the minimum. Depending on where you're at, you might go over that time. And there's two basic ways to go about doing it. You have what we call Part 61 school, and you have a Part 141 school. So a Part 141 school is more like a college-based style training, where you have to be there at a certain time. You have to put in a certain amount of hours a week or a day. A 61 style of learning is, I would say, more versatile, where you can kind of pay as you go, and you don't have to be there every single day at a specific time. It's just more open, so that's kind of how it goes.
Okay. So one question I have for both of you, you mentioned, especially with the flight training funding, not being able to have that. So FAFSA, I'm assuming FAFSA would go for the mechanic school. Is FAFSA helping you to go to flight school as well? You both can comment on FAFSA need or not with your different programs.
Yeah, so financial aid is something that's available for those that qualify. And I believe it's the same thing with flight school. What it boils down to when you think about financial aid is when you think about the traditional college setting where there's institutional aid and scholarships to really bring down the affordability of the programs, that's where you won't see it. There's going to be a gap that you will have to figure out whether or not it's a loan or a payment plan to assist it, compared to the traditional colleges where there's institutional aid and other type of scholarships you may qualify for. I know specifically with the aviation school, I'm assuming it's the same with the pilot schools when they're trying to get their money.
Yeah, so on the pilot side, it all depends on kind of what route you take. So you can go to a college-based program, and now you do have those FAFSA, and you have those grants and different monies that you can get from college. However, if you go on the outside, where you go into flight schools outside of college, then yes, you have to obtain the funding yourself. And then there's organizations out there where they give scholarship, and there's a lot of money out there for aviation now. It's just a matter of being persistent and getting it. But yes, on the college side, regular college tuition, but on the private side, a little harder to obtain funding.
Got it. Hi, Kimberly. Welcome. Okay,
Hi, thank you. Sorry I'm late.
No problem. So my company, College Cafe Consulting and Financial Education, that's our mission, to help students find funding for school, because we don't want you to feel like you can't do it because you can't afford it. There are ways of doing it. So I will definitely stay in contact with you all to figure out where's the money for our kids who want to go and become pilots or mechanics. So Kimberly, we're going to jump into you. We introduced you before, but just give us a little more information on you and how you became a pilot with or first officer with Alaska Airlines.
Sure. First of all, I'm glad to be here. Sorry I'm late. I just flew in to Memphis for a conference. I'm a first officer with Alaska Airlines on the 737, and I'm based in Seattle, Washington. And I've been with with Alaska Airlines rather, for about 20 years. And I have a military background. I was a child, and my father took me to air shows, and I just love seeing those airplanes fly around. Also, my father had been in the Army, and I saw all of these pictures of my parents in Spain and France and Germany, and I decided that I wanted to travel and I wanted to serve. So I needed to figure out how to make that a reality. My father, growing up, helped me to look into the military. That was the option that I took. I took a lot of math and science in school, languages. I tried to take advantage of a lot of leadership opportunities. I applied for the Air Force Academy in junior and senior year, and I was really honored to be selected for a nomination. Almost every service has an academy, that's Army, Navy, Coast Guard, And there are other options that we can talk about for the military. But for me, it was that 4-year school. So it's a full ride. And you also receive jump school opportunities as well as the equivalent of your private pilot. So I did that for 4 years. I received my degree. I was commissioned into the Air Force. And then I had just a wonderful career of flying after Air Force pilot training, which I went to in Texas. They taught us visual instrument training as well as acrobatics. I had a career where I flew cargo. So I flew equipment that the military needed all around the world. And then I had a career flying air refueling. So I did refueling so that airplanes can extend their range. And I'm happy to answer questions about that later. About halfway through my career, I decided I wanted to experience civilian aviation. And to me, a dream company was Alaska Airlines, since I'm from the Seattle area. And so I went to a conference, the conference where I am right now, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, where they have scholarships. And they also have assistance with just training you how do you interview, how do you prepare for a career, and they basically follow you through your progress. So I was hired and became a 737 first officer. So my duties are I prepare the aircraft for flight. I do takeoffs and landings, complete all of the checklists. It's been an amazing career. I've enjoyed my travels. I'm happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that you might have about my career.
Thank you so much. Well, we've got a connection because Mr. Worthington was in the Army, so we got that military connection there. So thank you for joining us. So you mentioned the courses that you enjoyed. So I want to kind of piggyback on that for the students who are listening. What courses do you really need to pay attention to if you think you might want to go into the mechanics or become a pilot? So let's expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say just have a broad range of courses. I think if you want to go to a school, like a specific school, like for example Embry-Riddle or an academy or something like that, I would recommend as much math as you can take, and as much of the sciences as you can take, as much of English and writing and things like that. For the military in general, I would say you really, to be an officer and to become a pilot, you can also become a warrant officer, but to be an officer and a pilot, I would say you need to get good grades, and any 4-year degree is acceptable from my understanding. And I'd be interested to hear other people's responses, but that's my advice.
Okay.
I would say with that, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I would say with that, it's kind of the same thing. Just have a broad understanding and of a wide range of topics. But one of the things on the general aviation side, because that's kind of where you're gonna get your start from, right? You don't really have to have anything, right? You can kind of start from scratch as long as you have the ability to learn, right? And the know-how to train, right? Then you'll be good to go. Because you don't really need a college degree in aviation to be a pilot. So my recommendation to most of the, I like to call them more young aviators, but my recommendation to these young aviators is to, if you want to go the college route, then go to school for something that you're really interested in, because now if you do that, you'll tend to stick to that, right? You tend to do very well in whatever that degree may be, and then do aviation on the side. So now you have the best of both worlds, and you also have something to fall back on if it doesn't work out for you. So that would be my recommendation. You don't have to go to school for aviation to become a pilot.
Okay.
And one more thing, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. A lot of community colleges, to piggyback on what he said, they have programs where you can go right in and you can just focus on the aviation program in the community college. Mm-hmm. And that's a great way to go.
Okay. And I always say that to some of my students as well, because some of them, they think they might want to do that, but I feel that especially in the time of colleges costing so much, you might as well start at the community college level and get your courses at a cheaper cost to you, and then transition into a 4-year school once you've determined that that's where you want to be. Because 2 to off, and you're right. We start off and realize we don't want to be there. Now we're trying to figure out how we're going to switch schools, transfer, and is the money going with us or not?
And I could touch base on that, on the financial aid side with the just understanding basic degrees, right? So every college you go to, you're going to have to take that freshman year English 101. There's going to be a math. There's going to be a humanities course. So there's at least 4 courses that you can take at a community college that will save you $30,000, because these colleges are $60,000 a year. So, when you think about some of the gen ed courses that are available, those are the ones that you really want to take advantage of at the community college level while you're trying to figure out, all right, what's my next move? Especially if you're not completely sold and have a clear career path on what you want to do. Working in the 4-year colleges for years, I've seen students go into a lot of these random majors because they thought it would be fun, but not really having a clear career path. $200K later, they're working at a job they could have got out of high school, and it's like, all right, yeah, you pay for an experience, but you're not, the return on your investment isn't there. So yes, a lot of students want to get out of their parents' homes. They want to enjoy college. I completely understand that. But there's a financial aspect to that you really have to take in consideration. And I think that, if you can get some of those core classes at your, Bergen community, your Passaic community colleges, just get those basic courses. You can save yourself $20,000 to $30,000 just by taking 4 to 5 classes at home for 1 semester.
Nope, absolutely, totally agree with that. And speaking about training, Mr. Worthington, you have one of the youngest pilots that you just trained, Miss
Kamora Freeland. Yes. So yeah, she's doing tremendous things right now. She actually just started school in Spelman, and she got a free ride. So that's a big deal, So she was the youngest Black female pilot that came out of New York. So, real proud of her. Such an amazing young lady. And I actually just have another young lady that's probably going to follow in her footsteps. Okay. She's 16 right now, and she's starting her pilot training. So she's probably going to be the next one. Okay. That's pretty cool.
All right. Yeah. So also in continuing with the courses, in my mind, I'm thinking that you're spending a lot of time learning about the weather, and are you learning about how to look at the clouds in terms of flying? And I know you have the traffic control or whatever, the tower talking to you or something, but I'm guessing that part of your training also is being able to see how high or how low you need to fly as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that you actually learn. It's funny when we talk about pilots. I say a pilot needs to be a well-rounded individual, because you learn a lot of different concepts. You're learning a little bit of weather, so you somewhat of a weatherman or weatherwoman, right, if you will. You have to learn about psychology, and you have to understand how your mind works in order to obtain some of these things. So it's a lot of different topics that you'll learn about. You learn about airspace, you learn about physics. There's a lot of math. There's a lot of different topics, and that's why I mentioned being a well-rounded individual. You'll succeed if you have that mindset.
Okay. So let's go back to Miss Ford. Talk to us about being a female pilot. How was that training? How rigorous? How tough was it? Were the guys giving you a hard time? Or let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, I would say that I did come in quite some time ago, and there were not a lot of people of color, and there were not a lot of women pilots. And I think that a few things that I had that benefited me there were actually 5 women in my Air Force pilot training class. That was out of 25, so that was highly unusual. So I had a big support system. I also had maybe about 5 or 6 people of color in my class, so that was a big support system too. I think the thing that benefited me was this is a different time now, but at the time, I think that people did not expect me to finish. And so that sort of allowed me to just sort of, I had some mentors just told me to focus on the prize. So I was really able to focus on my training. One of my instructors in Air Force pilot training sat me down and he said, "Do you really want to get through this program? It's going to be tough, but I'm going to help you through it." And so we would study. We would do something called chair flying, which is basically going through your maneuvers and your takeoffs and your landings. He went on to become a Thunderbird, which is the Air Force demonstration team. So that just speaks to the caliber of person that he is. Once I finished Air Force pilot training, I always tried to find a mentor wherever I was, a peer mentor or someone above me, really to sit down with me and talk with me and just help me to focus. As I went through and matured, I always made sure to find my support system or my people. And I started joining groups such as Women in Aviation, Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And we have mentoring programs where you have a mentor either write to you via email at the time, or like a call or something like that, or a convention. And so that really helped to uplift me and to inspire me and to help me to know that I could make it. My original mentors, of course, were my parents. And I think that I had that inspiration from the very beginning. They told me that I could do anything and that I belonged in the room, and to really focus on my training. And so with their support and encouragement, and then those support groups that I found along the way, I was able to find success, which is Black Pilots of America is one that I failed to mention, Red Tail Hawks, Sisters of the Skies. And that's what I would encourage your students and future pilots to do.
Okay. And just as you mentioned the statistics with the 5 women in your group, you missed at the beginning. I threw out some stats that I looked up. And so like 90%, they said, of aircraft pilots are white men, and less than 7% are women, and only about 1% are women of color. So yes, the numbers still aren't rising as much, but there are a lot more coming up. And I have to say, in the last few months, all 4 of these organizations that you all have mentioned, Sisters of the Sky, BPA, BAP, WAI, I was somehow got information on the different scholarships that they had available for students. So they're definitely organizations that I know would be available to expose children, which go into my question or comment about exposure opportunities for children. So can you talk each about the different things that you do that would help expose children who think they want to become pilots or want to fly or whichever?
I'll start off, since I am part of the academy. We do a lot of outreach, and I'm continuously trying to bring the knowledge and education about the aviation industry to different high schools. So we do the high school, college fairs. We're active in the community with community-based organizations, so like GED and HiSET centers, as well as like YMCA. We'll attend some of their events as well. We also attend air shows. So, that draws a lot of people who are there to see the Thunderbirds, as you mentioned, so that's another way we just try to just be where students are. There are a lot of schools now that are trying to add aviation as a part of their tech program and offering. So we're trying to partner up with those schools as well and just expand the knowledge, really. I mean, there's so many opportunities and there's such a huge demand, and the floodgates are open. Both of you all talked about how the industry wasn't as colorful as it is now. Not that it's equal, but it's the same thing on the mechanic side. It almost seems like it was like when you think about the unions and how it's like a brother secret type of setting, that was the case as well with the mechanics. But I mean, I'm the vice president of admissions there, so I'm letting my people in. But we are starting to see a lot of diversity, and I think it comes with the educating and just the exposure, because a lot of people don't know about the industry. They see the plane and they're like, all right, they know the pilot and they know the flight attendants, but there's so much more that goes into, aviation. So I mean, that's what we're typically trying to do, just continuously out there trying to educate people.
Yeah. On my end, because I'm on the general aviation side, it's a little easy to touch some of the younger kids. So we have programs with like the local libraries throughout the city. We also have programs in all the schools. Well, not all the schools, but we try to tap into the schools, and it's from elementary all the way to high school, right? We working real close with JFK redevelopment, and we actually do little movie nights, and we watch movies like Planes and things like that, just to get the young kids interested, just planting that seed in a young kid. You never know where they will go later. So we do a lot of those programs. Now on the organizational side, we have a huge program in Seattle, and that's yeah, so we're doing big things out there. We actually sent a few young aviators out there this year, and they finished that program out there with the Red Tail Hawks, one of our chapters of BPA. We also have a big program that we conduct in Texas. It's called Summer Flight Academy, where we send young aviators down there to partake in a flight training academy, where they get some ground time and also flight time where they can actually solo an airplane. So we do a lot. I personally go to schools. I give ground classes, private ground sessions. We also we developed our own ground session that we do, and some of the other chapters throughout the organization. We have online ground schools, and they're free. So you have the opportunity to plug in or tap into these ground schools and at least get your feet wet, and then move on from there. Now on professionally, for me, I fly helicopters for the police department, and I invite anybody and everybody to come down to to at least see the helicopters. Most people don't get a chance to see a helicopter up front, right? We go to the airport, and when we think about aviation or think about pilots, we only think about airplanes, or typically we think about airplanes, and you don't really see the helicopter side of that. So I invite everybody down to just witness that. There's some police officers that haven't even seen the helicopters close up. So, but I tried to open that up to as many as I can, just to expose as many people I can to aviation, and plant that seed. And then we take airport tours. So we do airport days where we can take you up in air traffic control towers, and you can actually see how emergency services work, where you can crash rescue vehicles. We take them into the maintenance hangars and see how the planes are being fixed, and just as much exposure as we can. That's what we're here for.
Okay, nice.
For my part, I'm on the board of trustees for the Museum of Flight in Seattle, and we have classes for kids as young as like 3 to 5 years old, and they just have exposure to airplanes and activities. A lot of our programs focus on 6th to 8th grade, and we have Amelia's Aero Club, and then a group called the Michael P. Anderson Program. So he's someone you should Google. He was an astronaut that perished in the early 2000s on the Space Shuttle Columbia. But basically, those are monthly programs where you come in and you get to learn about aviation, and you get to learn about all the different aircraft in the museum. It's a lot of fun, and you also get to interact with aviation mentors. We also have like a space shuttle trainer at the museum, where you can hands-on, you can get to touch that, and you have like a mission control launch thing, and we have simulators where you get to fly around. And yes, Red Tail Hawks Flying Club with Jesse Hayes out here has been just absolutely amazing. We love all the different students. It's also a monthly program where you can you go to different aerospace employers, military bases, airports, and you also do ground school. And then in the summertime, you can do the Fly program in conjunction with Texas and other locations, where you can get to work towards a solo. So that's really exciting. Through the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. Now, this is high school through college students. We do ACE camps. I know those are done through different capacities around the nation, and they give you just a basic exposure just to people who aren't sure, who just want that exposure. You can either do it for fun, you can do general aviation, you can do commercial airlines or military, but it's just giving you that initial exposure. Through my job, we have Alaska Aviation Day every year, and that's pretty much open to all youth. You can just love aviation, or you can want to do it as a career. So we basically open up our airplanes, and I think a lot of different commercial airlines do this. We open up our airplanes, and you can get to walk around, listen to some music, and get to eat some great food. And then the last thing that I do is, since some of the pathways are pretty rigorous and they require a lot of preparation, I do a lot of mentoring for people who want to, try to fly a fighter pilot, be a fighter pilot or some sort of military aircraft or mechanic, since it requires specified training and application process. So I've been involved with OBAP, Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and Sisters of the Skies to help people who want to try those specialized programs too.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Worthington, can you talk about the difference between flying a helicopter versus an airplane? Is it the same? What are the differences? And is it easier to learn the other after you've learned the first one? Or, just give us a little more on that information.
Yeah, so helicopter pilot, it's funny, when I became a helicopter pilot, I was told airplane pilots have lazy feet. And when I got into the helicopter world, I quickly knew what they was talking about. So it's a lot of moving parts in the helicopter. There's a lot of coordination. You're using both feet, both hands consistently. But in the airplane, I like to say you set it and forget it. It's not that simple, but it's definitely flying a helicopter is a little bit more intense. Now, as far as the transition, I was a commercial airplane pilot already, commercial rated airplane pilot already, when I started my helicopter training. So yes, being an airplane pilot made the helicopter world 1,000% easier. I already understood all the concepts and everything. It was just a matter of what we like to call stick and rudder pilot, right? Just getting familiar with the controls, because it is completely different. In the airplane, we have a yoke. In the helicopter, you have a cyclic and a collective. So it's, completely different ball game. Which one do I like the best? I guess it really depends on the mission, what I'm flying. So in the airplane, if I'm flying far, long distance, then yeah, I'd rather be in the airplane. But flying low and, doing some of the things that we do in the police department, I'd clearly rather be in a helicopter, so it all depends on the mission and the type of environment you're flying in. But yes, if you have one, the other one will be easier to obtain.
Okay, thank you. So can we explain also the difference between, I guess, being a commercial pilot versus what will be another term? I'm guessing, like, if you're doing cargo pilot, is it the same, different? Are there different types?
You want to answer? You want me?
I'll have you answer the ratings, because I like hours and things like that.
So basically, like from a civilian or somebody a non-aviator, you would think commercial pilot means the airline, right? But we're really talking about the type of certificate that you have. Right. So when you start off, you'll typically start off with your private pilot certificate. That doesn't mean that you're a private pilot flying private jets, right? It's just the first level of certificate that you obtain. And then from there, you'll move on to like your instrument rating. You'll get different ratings to go on to your certificate. And as you progress, you'll go up to your commercial pilot, then up to ATP, and so forth. So it's just different ratings and certificates that we're talking about, not actually the operation per se.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And then from the operation perspective, I would say there are companies such as FedEx and UPS, and they're basically structured a little differently than a commercial airline. They usually have a hub and sort of spoke type of system where they, the packages and cargo comes into a certain location, and then the pilots fly around the world and bring the cargo to and from the hub. Commercial airlines, we also do fly cargo. We're structured actually similarly But of course, our primary mission is to bring passengers where they want to go around the world. And you can pretty much have any type of schedule, day, night, just depending upon where you're based and the type of aircraft that you're on.
Got it. So, share what's the longest flight you've ever done? Like furthest distance, time wise, whichever you want to share.
For me, I think the furthest flight is like 16 or 17 hours, starting from the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, and then flying all the way back to the West Coast. Sometimes we do air refuelings or just go really high. And so that was an interesting flight for me, to be in the air for that long. I've also flown with what's called augmented cruise. So depending on how far you're flying and the type of flying that you're doing, you might have 2 or 3 or 4 people flying with you. And so you're basically rotating and taking naps at the same time. So we probably had 4 or 5 or 6 pilots helping out with that. And I believe the commercial airlines, we do it the same thing.
Yes, Mr. Worthington.
So for me, we don't, in small airplanes, we're not flying over the water like that. We can't really make it without stopping it and getting fuel. So the furthest I flew was across the country from California to New York in a small airplane, and that took a long time. Yeah, it takes a long time, but I typically don't fly that far unless I'm really going on vacation or doing something that I really need to be across the country. I'll just get on a big plane and do it. But for the most part, we do have an event in Arkansas, so we have to fly there every year, and that's a decent flight from New York to Arkansas on a small airplane.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you saying, so normally it's about 6 hours to fly on a bigger plane from east to west coast? So you're saying it would take longer in the smaller plane?
Yes. So if you really want to think about it, I tell people this: wherever you can drive, just kind of cut that in half, and that gives you an idea of how long it would kind of take you to fly someplace in a smaller aircraft.
Yeah. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. So one term I saw when I was doing my research, a fixed wing aircraft. So is there a different type of aircraft where the wing is not fixed?
Yeah, so the fixed wing aircraft is basically an airplane, right? That's what you see every day.
Mm-hmm.
And now a rotary wing aircraft is a helicopter, because you have the blades that spin. So those blades that spin on top of the helicopter are essentially wings, but they rotate. So that's where we get rotary wing and fixed wing from.
Oh, okay. All right. So in my mind, I'm thinking the wing itself is. I'm like, wait a minute, that imagination. Forget that comment. We'll retract that. But okay, so anything else that I may not have thought about to ask that you all think are burning information that you really want our audience to walk away with and say, oh my gosh, I really, really want to do this? What else can we share with everyone to know about aviation and how it's a great field to join?
I think it's a great career. I think you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your leadership skills, running a crew of people to include, whichever area of aviation you decide to go in. But if it's commercial, it'll be flight attendants, a captain, a first officer, dealing with your passengers, getting everyone there on time, dealing with all the services and food, and dealing with weather and other challenges. It can be very rewarding. Plus, you get to see different places, get to meet some very interesting people. This is a great time to get hired. There's a lot of retirements. A lot of people are reaching that age of 65. Compensation is great. They're great packages. So I think you'll find it very interesting, and I really encourage you to give it a try.
Yeah, I would like to say there's a lot of different avenues to go down, right? So you can go the commercial aviation side, you can go general aviation side, military, law enforcement. There's so many different things. I'm a law enforcement pilot, and I get a chance to protect people every day, and that's just rewarding within itself. I actually took a check ride yesterday. The check ride is essentially a flight test. So I just got qualified as a pilot in command. It's essentially like a captain in on the airline side. in a bigger helicopter. So I'm flying that, and that's our air sea rescue mission. So with that, I have scuba divers on the aircraft, and we deploy scuba divers in the water, and pick people out, help people that's drowning or overturn boats or bridge jumpers, and so we basically handle all the Coast Guard missions in the New York City metropolitan area. So that's extremely rewarding within itself, and it's a very lucrative uh, industry to be in on that side. Right now, owning my own flight school and being an aviation business owner, it's endless the amount of money that you can kind of make, being in that field. So it's definitely a good thing to get into. Yeah, aviation is where it's at right now, and you have to use everything to your advantage. One of the things that I actually took away from is mentorships, right? That she mentioned. I wasn't brought up that way in start of my aviation career. I kind of had to do everything on my own. So now I provided that mentorship for other people, so they won't have to deal with some of the things that I personally been through. So that is huge. It's a big deal. It's very important. Meet a lot of people, make those connections, and if you do that, there's help along the way.
Absolutely. So go ahead,
Oh
Calvin.
no, I was just about to say, aviation in general. I mean, it's in demand and it's only growing. So when you start thinking about, you start making your college decisions and your post-secondary decisions, you want to you want to position yourself to be marketable at the end of that journey, right? So when you think about, all right, what does the job outlook look like? And I'm telling you, aviation is only growing. There were some stats that were shared earlier about 87 pilots per day, I think you said.
Yes, they need to train 87 per day for the next 20 years because we're running out of pilots.
So that's the pilot numbers. And then, like I said earlier, Boeing made a projection. There's a need for over 690,000 technicians over the next 18 years. So, when you start thinking about these numbers, we need people. So opportunity is endless.
Yeah. Actually, I want to add one more thing to that too. One of the things that I like to tell people is the aviation industry itself is not only pilots, right? That's kind of what we gravitate to, pilots or maybe even mechanics. It's so many different things in aviation. If you want to be a doctor, you can be a doctor in aviation, right? You want to be a lawyer, they have aviation lawyers. Almost any profession that you can think of, they have that profession in the aviation industry. So there's so many different things that you can do in the world of aviation. So don't just look at it as what you see. There's a lot of behind the scenes as well in aviation. So anything you put your mind to, you'll be able to obtain. And there's so many different things you can do in the field of aviation.
Nope, you're absolutely right, because everyone's important, from the flight attendants to the folks who are checking, your ticket to make sure that you're on the right plane or whatever. So there's definitely a place for everyone in the industry at large. But I wanted to say, when you mentioned about rescue, were you part of it when Captain Sully landed in the Hudson River?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't in the aviation unit at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I wasn't part of that.
Okay,
I just had one more thing to add. I wanted to mention, in addition to like community colleges, if you just wanted to stay local and have exposure to aviation, you can also look into your local Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve units. You can either become a pilot. There's something called a load master that loads cargo. There are doctors as well as technicians that he mentioned. So they give you benefits. They give you benefits to pay for your college. So just all kinds of great avenues and pathways. We also need people to design our airplanes and to design them safely. We need people to look out for the environment. We need to look at the designs of the future. We need people to look into drones and how those are going to fit into this. So basically, any discipline that you can imagine, as you mentioned, is related to aviation, and we need your ideas in this career field.
Yes.
And now that you've mentioned the size of planes, are the commercial planes getting a little bit smaller, especially with the leg room? There are certain airlines that have more leg room than the others. So Can you talk a little bit on that with the design? Are they making the seats smaller to have more people to make more?
From my perspective, I think that every airline has sort of like a different look or a different culture. Just off the top of my head, I think, Delta prides itself on just sort of that sort of luxury experience. So there are low cost carriers who are just trying to get you from point A to point B for $25 or $200 or something like that. So their goal is to get you there and to get, more people in there. My airline, Alaska Airlines, we're trying to fly up and down the West Coast. So we're sort of trying to provide a smaller amount of first class, but then a larger amount of passenger space. So I think along with that engineering conversation that we just had, a lot of airlines are working directly with the aviation companies like Boeing, to develop an aircraft that meets their needs. And that's why you have that different look and feel and paint scheme for each aircraft. That's my personal perspective.
Okay. Absolutely. No, what I know, and as I said before, I've flown more in the last 3 years than I had in previous years. So I'm kind of learning how the planes work and, seating and things like that. And the whole thing with flying, with by the time when you first check in and your luggage goes and the time, that your luggage is on the plane and you're boarding. So there's a whole system that goes into play to make sure that your flight is smooth and no delays or things like that.
And that's a job, by the way. We need dispatchers and people that sort of control that whole process. It's not only in the military, but it's also in commercial airlines. And also there's a maintenance control aspect of it. We spend a lot of time on the phone talking to maintenance. I couldn't do my job without, excellent maintainers. And I'm very appreciative of that. But that's an excellent career field to consider.
Absolutely. So we have an audience question, which is, how did you push through imposter syndrome if you experienced it during the process of becoming a pilot?
You want to take that?
Sure. I'll say for me, going back to mentors, I had mentors tell me to know that I belonged, and they would tell me to do something called chair flying. I don't know if it's already been discussed, where you basically start from putting on your shoes and socks and you go through your day. So you would say, okay, I'm going to put on my uniform. I'm going to grab my bag. I'm going to walk out the door. I would actually even walk to the building where I was going to do a briefing. And I would sort of stand, and I would, in the military at the time, we had to stand up and give our knowledge. So I would sort of like stand up and give knowledge. I always made sure to learn my information cold. I would basically say it to myself, or I would use like a recording. I would have my family and friends just quiz me on this material and each phase of flight, so that no matter how nervous I was, I could say, rotate at 100 knots, or I could say, the hydraulic pressure is 1676, because I memorized that. And so I think just having that in my mind really helped me. I would study with other people, because it's hard to be the center of attention, and it's hard to be in an environment where you're going to get a lot of critique. But that is the name of our game, just because we just have to do the best job that we can do. And so I really allowed those other students to critique me, and to get used to that, and just really holding myself to a high standard. There were days where I made mistakes, and they are, for example, you would say the wrong call sign on the radio, or something like that, or your landing wasn't as great as you wanted it to be. So another mentor taught me to you take responsibility. You talk with the other pilots or other crew members about what mistake you made. You maybe do some extra training or figure out what you needed to do. So you debrief it, you take ownership of it, and then you basically have, in the moment and later, you have to sort of set that aside and say, okay, because the airplane is still moving. They say, keep flying that airplane. It was a hard skill to develop. And I think I had to be just kind to myself and allow myself to grow and progress. When I first started, I was extremely shy, and those hard moments were very tough. But I just decided that I wasn't going to give up, and I kept trying. So,
awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I like to do is I tell people to read it, write it, say it. right? So it gives your brain the opportunity to grab the information from more than one source, right? So if you write something down, if you read something first and now you write it down, now your brain can pull it from what it remember you writing, right? And now if you take it and say it to somebody or try to teach somebody something that you learned, it makes it easier for you to remember now. So that's one of my things. Read it, write it, say it. I think is very important. And me, I'm my own, biggest and worst critic at the same time, right? So I want to be the best in the room because I don't want to have to feel like, I'm not welcome. And you'll get that, especially being of color, you might get that. So I was told one time that I had to work harder to be just as good. And I'm like, but why? So I said, okay, I spent my time making sure that my craft was at the best that it can possibly be. So when I get questioned, it doesn't matter, right? And another thing, when you take these check rides and you take these tests, you have to take an oral exam. So a lot of people are nervous about where they go to take these oral exams. You don't know the examiner that taking this test with, so you're nervous about that. But if you look at it on a bigger picture, if you know the material, if you know the material, then it doesn't matter who asks you the question. So just be the best that you can be and give it your all the time, and you'll be okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you all joining us. There are no more questions from the audience. So I want to thank you again for taking time out of your evening just to share with the NAHP, the College Cafe followers, with the Parent Matters followers as well. Because again, we're trying to expose our children, our future, to all different pathways that they may not have thought of prior. So I want to say thank you again to Mr. Calvin Conyers, Mr. Brian Worthington, Ms. Kimberly Ford. Thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of our partners, NAHP, Parent Matters, and College Cafe, we bid you good night. And thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you on the next broadcast.
Thank you for having
me. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Thank you.